Today we're going to do a massive ultra-compact comparison, pitting 20 different strollers against each other in order to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each in terms of performance and mechanics, which models will best suit different sorts of use, such as travel, keeping in the car, or all-day trekking in an urban environment, and most importantly, which models are worth getting at all in our opinion, and which ones should be avoided like the plague. In case you're new here, welcome to our channel. Please note that we don't sell strollers, engage in paid advertising, or even use affiliate links. Our qualifications for making both recommendations and condemnations are based on a decade's experience of repairing strollers for private consumers, distributors, and manufacturers. So let's get started then, breaking this mega horde down into three broad categories, those which in our opinion are not worth buying, other than possibly for very specific needs, models that may be worth buying given the right price, and lastly, those ultra compacts that have distinguished themselves enough in terms of durability and performance to get our stamp of approval. And starting then with those models that we feel are not worth buying are a pair of strollers from Silvercross, first of which is the Clic, a pretty run-of-the-mill ultra-compact, priced in the middle tier for models of this sort, with the brand's signature fashion-oriented textiles and blingy logo bits, a full recline, adjustable leg rest, and a rain cover and bumper bar included with purchase. Yet despite these factors, that may make it look like a good deal for the price, the mechanics and performance of the model aren't quite up to snuff unfortunately, with a very fragile chassis prone to loosening or breaking, which is complicated by somewhat complex internal mechanisms, a fiddly fold, a seat that's both a bit too shallow and not quite upright enough, loose front wheels apt to cause wobbling problems, and a few other annoying issues that we cover in the model's standalone review. And similarly problematic is the Clic's slightly bigger and undoubtedly more popular brother, the Jet, a strange hybrid of ultra-compact and umbrella stroller that, while also flashy and higher priced than the Clic, is also quite fragile and rickety, with a propensity for wobbling issues, problematic foot support past the early toddler phase, a brake system that is not disassemblable and built to fail in the long run, and a major Achilles heel in its weak locking points that have already shown themselves to be a serious braking area for scores of parents. This is one of those models that looks great in pictures and good on paper, in terms of its reported weight and dimensions, and a slew of buzzword characteristics meant to put some meat behind its sleek look. But unfortunately again, as with the Clic, the model's durability and performance simply don't match the price. Next up is the Boogaboo Ant, the first and better of a pair of ultra compacts we'll be covering today that attempt the misguided goal of putting a reversible seat on a model meant to fold down to cabin luggage dimensions. And while Boogaboo should arguably get points for effort, the end result with the Ant is unfortunately a model whose seat is simply too small, despite the origami wizardry used to try and make it bigger. Without seat walls or leg support in the reverse position, a handle that is too loose and prone to symmetry issues, and use processes in terms of folding, unfolding, and reversing the seat that are simply far too complicated and time-consuming. With the release of the Butterfly, a far more promising model that we've had the opportunity to see in person now, and that we'll review as soon as it hits the stores, the Ant is likely on its way out, and if you're looking then to get an ultra compact from Bugaboo specifically, my advice is to just hold on a tiny bit longer. The wait should be worth it. The second reversible seat ultra compact that I wouldn't recommend getting is a Cybex Eezy S Twist 2, whose seat is too shallow, despite the addition of an adjustable leg rest with the latest iteration, which has loose wheels prone to wobbling problems, and whose folded dimensions are above what is likely to be accepted as cabin luggage. But the key problem with the Twist, though, is that it's simply way too complex in design for its size and weight, with fragile internal mechanisms both in the seat frame and the chassis, and having too many separate, thin bars weakly riveted together at its hinges and connection points to avoid loosening up to the point of creating symmetry issues that will complicate folding or using seat functions down the road. In addition, it's not that cheap, at least not versus models that are only slightly larger but much more sturdily constructed, such as the Joules Hub, the Boogaboo Bee, or even Cybex's own Mios, at least if you go for the older model. The Twist 2, and by extension the Twist Plus 2 as well, where the only difference is slightly larger wheels, tries to do too much with too little, and is too fragile as a result. Cybex, or really their parent company Goodbaby International, rarely uses a chassis design for just a single model, and while we're looking at the Twist then, it's worth taking a moment to talk about three additional strollers, which are all built essentially the same, but without the reversible seat. The regular Eezy S2, the Eezy S Plus 2, which is again the same model just with slightly bigger wheels, and the GB Qbit Plus All City, which is also essentially the same, despite being sold through the GB brand instead. These models are all sturdier than the Twist, in that they don't have the added mechanical complexity of that swiveling seat frame, and their seats are also larger as well, but the rest of the chassis is still quite weak, with the same thinner bars, weaker connection points, and loose wheels, while price-wise, the two Eezy S models are pretty expensive, too expensive in my opinion to be worth this weakness. The Qbit Plus All City is a little cheaper, more in line with the model's durability, though still not my favorite ultra-compact out there by far. So if you're going to get any of these, such as if you live in one of those places in the world where it's hard to find any stroller in stores not coming from a Goodbaby subsidiary, then at least go for the Qbit, though I do suggest you keep watching, and hopefully we can find you a better alternative. Similarly low price, but still one to avoid in my opinion, is a Joie Pact, which despite being cheaper, is quite similar design-wise to the Silver Cross Clic, and suffers from many of the same problems, being just generally too weak, with flimsy connection points that cause the model's bars to bend and strain as you stroll, loosening the chassis over time, and having suspension that isn't quite tight enough, which only exacerbates the already rickety feeling of driving the model. The Pact also has a shallow baseboard and a seat that's too sloped in its upright position, which can be a pretty uncomfortable combination for a lot of children. Again, it is cheap, which writes off some of the structural weakness in my opinion. But if you really need cheap, note that we'll deal with a few models in a moment that are similarly priced but definitely better constructed. And also note, if you live in the States, that the significantly pricier Nuna TRVL is nearly identical to the Joie Pact, as we explain extensively in the Pact standalone review, and should thus be avoided for many of the same reasons. Before moving on to the maybe models, we need to lastly talk about a final pair of ultracompacts from Goodbaby International, the Cybex Libelle and the GB Pockit Plus, as well as any other version of the Pockit that may still be out there. It's gotten a little hard to keep track, where the problem is that they're just too small, to the point where they really barely function as strollers at all, using too many hinge points to facilitate that ultra compact fold that connect components and bars predominantly constructed of plastic, whose tensile strength is so weak that the models feel unsafe to drive, at least outside of the airport, and especially when used with children over a year old or so. In addition, that smaller than necessary fold comes at the expense of having just a bare-bones seat with no footrest, a shoddy brake system, and a high propensity for developing asymmetry alignment issues down the road, if you even make it down the road that is, without these models actually braking. The Lebel is a hair better than the Pockit Plus, so if you have very specific holiday plans that necessitate such a model, like you need something to tie atop a backpack, to hike up a mountain, at the top of which is a very smoothly tiled shopping mall, then at least go for that one. But for most people out there, these strollers are simply too weak to be worth buying, regardless of the price. Alright, moving on to the maybes then, our first model is the Doona, which is not exactly an ultra compact, being rather a car seat that can be converted into a kind of stroller, and which in my gut actually falls in the not to buy category, but which has been made a maybe simply by virtue of a plethora of comments we've gotten on the Doona's standalone review endorsing the model, despite being branded as coming from the cult of Doona by the other half of our commentators. Having looked the model over thoroughly, and having spent a lot of time talking with people who've used the Doona, my chief criticisms are that the model doesn't really function that well as a stroller, having no suspension, no inbuilt storage, and no ability to recline to the point where it's safe to keep your baby aboard for more than a couple hours at a stretch. It's also quite heavy for a lot of parents to lift out of the car with your baby already in it, versus snapping a regular infant car seat to an ultra-compact chassis kept in the trunk. And lastly, it's pretty costly for an item that you'll only get 6 to 8 months of use out of, after which you'll be forced to reinvest into not just another car seat, as would happen anyway, but also a new stroller. And the model is hard to resell in my experience as well, because the market has a lot less trust for car seats versus regular strollers due to all the added safety concerns. That being said, there are again plenty of people who nonetheless claim it to be convenient, so while I would recommend not purchasing it before you've actually seen it, I won't presume that it's impossible that you might find it useful. The other 3 strollers filling out the rest of the maybe section are models that aren't so bad as to not recommend buying necessarily, but are rather only worth it if you can get a great price, and which also make somewhat better alternatives to the models we've covered so far if you live somewhere with a limited diversity of available brands. And the first of these then is the Mclaren Atom, which, though definitely a little weak versus the top end of the market, is still decently built for holding up as a holiday model or for keeping in the trunk for quick trips into the supermarket. It's also hand luggage acceptable and comes stocked with a rain cover, adjustable leg rest, travel bag, and an inbuilt newborn cocoon, making for a pretty good deal if you can find it cheap and need an ultra compact for more limited use. Next up is the Mountain Buggy Nano V3, which, while a tad above the IATA guidelines for cabin luggage, can make a decent option for lighter around town use, providing a somewhat sturdier feel than the Atom, with a slightly bigger seat, a newborn acceptable recline, and a shoulder strap. For its size, I'd have liked to see it even sturdier feeling, as size-wise it's really competing with the Metro Plus and Minu that we'll be covering in a little bit, but at the same time, it has been on the market for quite a while now, and has shown itself to hold up decently for the price, and I've also found from talking with patrons that mountain buggy models tend to be available in some parts of the world where it can be harder to get American and European brands, and if this is you, then it will definitely make a sturdier option than what we covered in the first section. And last up then for the maybe section is the Chicco Goody, which is one of these newfangled quote-unquote self-folding functions, whose added value is questionable in my opinion, versus the already quite easy fold that most ultra compacts have anyway, but which does at least look cool in a clockwork sort of way once you set the process in motion. Beyond this, the model has acceptable cross support, but also unfortunately, both a lot of riveted connection points likely to loosen over time, and one of the longest and most complex chains of internal mechanisms on the market, used to achieve that auto-fold feature, and as such, is definitely the sort of stroller likely to develop problems in the long run as it loosens up. That being said, I've seen the Goody pretty cheap in some parts of the world, and structurally, it is a little stronger than a lot of the self-folding models I've seen so far. So if you're really into this feature, can get the model for a good price, and are again, really looking for an ultra compact only for occasional holiday use or day trips to smoother environments like amusement parks, then it might be worth considering, though do note that if it's mainly the fold that you're into, and you're willing to up the price by $100 or so, we will be dealing with another, much stronger model that has this feature in a moment. Alright then, we finally made it to the straight up good ultra compacts, strollers that deliver well above everything that's come so far. And jumping straight into it, I'll start with our benchmark model, the Babyzen Yoyo 2, whose long-standing success in my opinion is a result of an excellent combination of durable minimalism and easy to use fold and carry characteristics. In terms of its comfort offering relative to cost, the current Yoyo does look a little bit like it's been king of the hill for going on too long, being a bit pricey not to come with a rain cover or inbuilt adjustable leg rest, but nonetheless, the model's proven longevity and simple no-nonsense singular purpose of being both great to drive, as far as ultra compacts go, and super easy to fold and sling over the shoulder, still make it my go-to model, to the extent that I still clearly feel that even a used first-generation Yoyo, or better a Yoyo Plus, will generally be a superior and safer choice for most ways one would use an ultra compact than the vast majority of other ultra compacts bought new on the wider market. Next up is the Joules Air, which has a one-hand, one-step folding system, constructed with a similar design to a lot of models these days, though a bit stronger than average, with good cross support, sturdy bars and connection points, and strongly fitted front wheels. Like the Yoyo, I feel it's about time that the model is updated with an inbuilt adjustable leg rest, and I also feel that the zipper element for adjusting the seat is a bit fiddly. But beyond these factors, while not quite as sturdy as the Yoyo, the Air still overperforms most of the rest of the market. It's built by a manufacturer who has repeatedly demonstrated a devotion to building products that hold up well over time, and while it is on the higher end price-wise, it also comes with a rain cover and travel bag included in the price, has that easy fold, and also fits within IATA cabin luggage guidelines, making it worth purchasing as a good, durable model for travel, keeping in the car, or daily use for shorter trips in smoother environments. Third for our models that are worth buying is a low-priced option whose excellent durability versus virtually any other model in the same price class, and quite a few that are more expensive as well, is one of the reasons so many ultra compacts fail in our estimation, and that's the BabyJogger City Tour 2. Which, though it's one of those ultra compacts that's right on the border size-wise for fitting as cabin luggage, passing the IATA's guidelines only with the wheels removed, has a great seat for the price, with both a full recline and an adjustable leg rest, a one-step, one-hand fold that's quite sturdily built, and strong horizontal stability. Its chief weaknesses are its wire-based brake system, which a lot of models have, a somewhat less accessible shopping basket compared to the competition, and looser front wheels than I'd like, though more in a way that can sometimes cause clacking noises over uneven ground, rather than in a way that makes them susceptible to wobbling problems. All that being said, for a good durable ultra compact with that full recline and adjustable leg rest, I haven't found any other model on the current market that can compete with the Tour 2 for the same price, making the model, in my opinion, the best budget option available for many years running. Next up is that self-folding option I promised you, the Leclerc Influencer, which not only pulls off its autofold with fewer internal mechanisms than the Goody, but is also just way more durable overall, with thicker bars and more reinforcement in its connection points. On top of this, the Influencer sports a very deep, near-full recline, an adjustable leg rest, and seat dimensions that are larger than a wide variety of other strollers, and I'm not only talking about ultra compacts, making this a key model to consider if your child is on the larger end of the growth charts. Negatives for the model are minimal, with my only real peeves being that the handle is a little on the low end, the canopy doesn't have flaps to cover its ventilation mesh, the back wheels are a little loose, and the model hasn't been out all that long, so it's always possible that unforeseen problems may show up in the future. Though with the sturdy, minimalistic style that the Influencer's mechanisms are constructed, I think there's a good chance that the model will have very strong longevity, especially outperforming any other self-folding models that we've seen so far. And in the end then, the Influencer is definitely worth considering, in particular for its seat size, but also for those of you who are taken with that auto-fold concept. Next up is the Ergobaby Metro Plus, whose chief positives are a rigid and durable chassis, a telescopic handle, a decently compact fold relative to its size when open, and a large, well-padded seat, with a full recline, adjustable leg rest, and good space under the canopy when the seat is fully upright. And while there are a few negatives, in that the fold is a bit stiff to accomplish with one hand, that high position canopy is a bit lacking when it comes to sun coverage, and the folded package is right on the border with regards to IATA guidelines, for nearly half the price of the Yoyo 2, with a rain cover and adjustable leg rest included, the strong durability of the Metro Plus means that it will outlast a good majority of similarly priced models on the wider market, making it a solid choice, in particular for keeping in the trunk, as well as for people who need to use an ultra compact as their primary stroller, but who also live in relatively smooth urban conditions. And last up today then is another one of our favorite ultra compacts of all time, the Uppababy Minu, an incredibly sturdy ultra compact due to the no-nonsense type approach that Uppababy takes with chassis construction, where a focus on using more metal than most of their competitors to build strong, well-fitted hinges and locking components into the folding system leads to a very rigid and robust feel. Added to this are larger than average sized rear wheels, tight front fork connections, and good suspension. The model has a few faults, chief among them being that it's definitely on the heavier and bulkier side for ultra compacts, being usually unacceptable as cabin luggage and somewhat uncomfortable to carry for long periods, despite having a shoulder strap. The original version was also somewhat bare bones in its seat, and had no adjustable leg rest, but with the imminent release of the Minu V2, another model which, like the Butterfly, we'll definitely be reviewing as soon as it hits the stores, these factors have been fixed, improving what was already the only ultra compact that I regularly recommend as a daily use model for people who may be out and about all day, due to its ability to tackle somewhat rougher urban environments like broken sidewalks and gravel on a regular basis without such use significantly reducing the longevity of the model. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, please subscribe, or even hit the donate button if you're so inclined, as this sort of support helps us to continue making videos in the future. If you'd like to know more about any of these models, we have standalone reviews for all of them that go into a lot more detail, and links have been added in the description. In addition, if you are currently shopping for a stroller, we have a buyer's guide on our Patreon page which lists a wide range of models that we recommend, with a lot of technical and lifestyle related information. You can find it by following the link in the description as well. Thank you.